First, I want to sincerely thank Kyle and Liz for inviting me to this event and for putting in all of the time and effort that's required to put on an event like this. And I want to thank each of you in advance for listening to what I have to say. I grew up with my grandparents in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And when I was about 10 or 11 years old, right about the time when my grandmother assumed that I was developing an interest in girls, she sat me down on the sofa and said, we need to talk. And so I was all ears as she looked directly into my eyes and said, Michael James, you will never bring a white girl into this house. And this was not the birds and the bees talk that I expected, and so I was somewhat taken aback. Perhaps you might be taken aback. Although if you know anything about the history of the American South and the history of routine violence that has been visited upon black men and black boys who are thought to be intimate with white women or white girls, you can understand why my grandmother might have been apprehensive about the prospect of me taking up with white women. And having heard this story, you may now understand why I was apprehensive about a decade or so later when I was actually seeing someone and she was white, and I thought it was serious enough that it was time to tell Grandma. So during our weekly phone conversation, I mustered up the nerve to say, Grandma, there's something that I've been keeping from you. It's pretty important. I don't know how you're going to react, but here it is. And she said, lay it on me. And I said, Grandma, I've been seeing someone. It's getting very serious, and she's white. There was a long pause. Didn't know what was coming. And then finally, Grandma broke the silence and said, is that it? And I said, yeah. And she then said, she's not pregnant, is she? And I said, no. And just like that, we were back to talking about the weather. And so I was quite surprised. It was not what I had expected. Also, a few years later, something went down that it wasn't what I would have expected, which was I took a girlfriend home for Christmas, and this girlfriend was also white, and things went very well. And I'll simply tell it through Valerie's eyes and her ears. She reminded me of this about 3 years ago when my grandmother passed away. And one of the sweet notes of condolences that I received was from Valerie, who was simply recalling that my grandmother, during that Christmas visit, took her aside and whispered sweet things to her to make sure that she felt welcomed and embraced. This same grandmother. And as I look back, it's obvious to me now that both of these episodes were reflective of my grandmother's love for me. In the first case, she loved me enough to try to protect me from dangers that she saw in the world, and to do so the only way that she knew how. In the second case, she loved me enough to accept and even embrace whoever I brought into my life. Although I suspect she was also hoping for great-grandchildren, but that's beside the point. It was ultimately, I think, about love. And I am so grateful to her for that love. I'm also grateful to have the opportunity tonight to do what I just did, which was to tell you a shortened version of the first story that I ever told at the Corner. In October of 2013 was when the Corner began. The theme was firsts, and so I told the story about the first time that I told my grandmother about dating a white woman. And I want to go back 2 months prior to that to tell you the origin story of the Corner. And that origin story begins with the fact that ultimately I am a complainer. Just ask Valerie or any of my ex-girlfriends. I'm a super complainer. And that summer, some of my complaints about the nightlife in Lewiston, Auburn came to a head. If you like cover bands or just going out to drink or play Beirut, if you don't like things that are intellectually challenging or engaging, there are a lot of opportunities to do that. And I love going out with my friends and drinking and going to hear cover bands, but I also wanted access to intellectually engaging and challenging events that wouldn't require me to go back to the Bates campus where I work. And I thought I can just complain, or I can actually try to do something about it. And so I reached out to Heather and Randy Letourneau, who are the owners of a restaurant in Lewiston known as She Doesn't Like Guthrie's. And I pitched them on the idea, and I said, do you want to take a chance on a Moth-style storytelling event, one that combines the format of the Moth main stage, which is curated, with the Moth Story Slams, where people's names are drawn from a hat. We combined those, and I said, let's try this. And Heather and Randy said, let's go for it. After 2 months of marketing and planning, we were ready for the first night. I thought if 20 people show up, it'll be a success. 80 people showed up the first night. Don't tell the fire marshal, but 80 people showed up. And we've had similarly strong turnout almost every month since then. We've also had success in that we've had 2 Kickstarter campaigns that were successful that brought in funds that have allowed us to host storytellers from Boston, New Hampshire, Vermont, Chicago, New York, including 4 Moth Grand Slam champions. It's been successful in creating a space where local community members can reveal themselves in much the same way that I did in the first 3 minutes or so, to their friends, to their neighbors, but also to strangers. And what we're building, what we've built in fact, is a micro-community focused on the art of storytelling. And we're connecting our local storytelling community with storytelling communities throughout the region, and even to some extent throughout the country. And I couldn't be more proud than I am. I will say there are some challenges, one of them being, in addition to being a complainer, I'm a control freak. And so I like to actually, in principle, do everything myself, but I can't do everything myself. And I've learned this the hard way sometimes. And I'll simply say, as I move to the close, that when I've been reminded that I can't do everything myself, I've been lucky, and I'm deeply grateful for the fact that there is a team of volunteers and sponsors, and storytellers, of course, and MCs who join with me to make this event happen. So, to wrap up, I just want to say that, in a way, I feel like a little bit of a poser here, because I know that this is about risk-taking and entrepreneurship. I'm a tenured college professor. You don't get much more job security than that. Even if, heaven forbid, the corner ultimately flops, I've got a salary, I've got a roof over my head, I've got food in my stomach. And so I doff my hat out of deep respect to each of you who is really an entrepreneur in that sense that you are putting your livelihood on the line as you try to make your ideas work. And so I celebrate what you do. So even though I don't really feel like I deserve to be in your ranks, I am still proud of what's happened with the corner. And so just as I did, I hope that each of you will not just take your idea and not just take your complaints and stick with them, but you'll find the partners, find the resources that you need in order to do it. You can't do everything, but you can do something. So go do that. And thanks a lot.
Yeah, so my name's Ned Swain, and I'm going to wing this. Like Liz just said, so I own and run a wine wholesale company, Devenish Wines. And then I also own a moving company, Local Muscle. I'm a partner in that. I moved to Portland in 2003 to set up the wine wholesale company. It was kind of an existing business, but very small scale, and I moved here to set up my own branch of it, but with no support from the person who had started it, really. It was a completely, figure it out on my own kind of operation. So it was very much like starting a new business. And I moved here just before I turned 21, so I was to start setting it up. So I was 21, running this wine wholesale company, and it was the first new wine wholesale company in Maine in a quarter century, in 25 years. So, nobody really took me seriously in the beginning. There were a couple of really fine restaurants that did because I had really interesting wines. And like, I said with Liz, I guess my excitement came across. But I was definitely this punk kid, putting themselves out there, trying to get people to take me seriously. And I didn't do myself any favors. I remember, going around to see restaurants in the summer, and I would riding my mountain bike around to see restaurants, and I wouldn't want to get too sweaty, so I'd take my shirt off so my shirt didn't get sweaty, so I'd be riding around like shirtless, like 21, 22-year-old kid going to restaurants and then talking to them about like really fine Burgundy or like Cahors from the Southwest and trying to explain to them why they should give me the time of day. So I did that for years. I did that for like eight years, 7, 8 years before talking to some friends. We came up with the idea of starting a moving company because we just figured, why not? Originally it wasn't to create jobs for our friends, it was to create jobs for ourselves because the other guys that I started the company with didn't have jobs at the time. So we started this moving company, and our real bottom line is just trying to be really friendly and nice to people, and it worked, shockingly. So like I've been doing, so that takes me through 13 years, and thinking about this since Liz asked me like a week ago to speak tonight, I've been thinking about this, and there are so many things that I have to be grateful for. I feel like owning a business, running a business, starting a business, that experience, being responsible for a business and being responsible for everything, being responsible for having people that work for you, all of it, there is so much pressure. There are so many things that could go wrong and derail everything and ruin it in any day at any given moment. We're the Indian proverbial monkey riding backwards on a tiger, yelling like, yes, good job, tiger. Yes, do that. Go that way, tiger. Do that. And like thinking that they're in charge of the tiger while they're sitting backwards on it. That's really to me like what being responsible for a business kind of is. It's a really crazy experience where anything could go wrong and derail it at any moment, and yet, and things do go wrong, and yet somehow they don't go wrong as catastrophically as they could, or somehow they get fixed. And there are so many things that have gone wrong in the course of the businesses that I've started and the different, challenges and things that I've taken on and committed to. And it's not that I have fixed the things that have gone wrong. It's, that I've been around people that could help me fix them, or, were there to fix them, to help me when they went wrong. I think that being a business owner or starting a business, it is a situation, it's an experience that really kind of, uniquely encourages gratitude in you. So as I've been thinking about this, to me, gratitude isn't something, it's not like something, although this isn't counterproductive, but sitting down and making a list or trying to enumerate all of the things that I'm grateful for, that almost cheapens it to me, like, because then it implies that the things that aren't on the list that you've made, that you're not grateful for those things, that there's two circles, there's two groups, and like this is the grateful circle and this is the not grateful pile. For me, being grateful is really, I guess as I've thought about this, I think I'm a pretty grateful person because I have a lot to be grateful for. Things like just like meeting Liz at a wine bar when I was 22 or whatever, and like where that went eventually 10 years later. So yeah, I have so much to be grateful for, and I think that being a grateful person really has helped me in business, because as a business owner, being responsible for a business, it's kind of your job, it's our job to think about all the death threats, to think about all the things that could go wrong every day, all the negative things, and try and keep them from happening. But if you dwell on them and you focus on them, it's just going to eat you up. It's going to exhaust you, and you have to be mindful. You have to be grateful. You have to try and focus on the positive things that you have in your environment around you, and keeping them in mind will make you a more positive person and make you more able to take risks, to commit. It will make you a better, more positive person to be around. And I think that being grateful has really helped me in what I've done. One of the story that I just told was just a little short, thing where I hurt my ankle at the New York City Marathon, and I just moved into a new apartment, and I couldn't move anything myself, and friends of mine from the moving company just volunteered to move everything, for free, and wouldn't let me pay them. And I'm extremely grateful for that. But there's a never-ending list of things for me to be grateful for. So that's really, the conclusion of like where I eventually got to of thinking all of this through is just how important and valuable and beneficial being grateful for and being aware of all the things that I have has been to me in my life, and like what has gotten me to where I am now. So ask me questions if you want more stories. I have a lot of stories.
Okay, so I'm Michael Desouza. So just like quick little background, I started a company here called Tap Tapas a few years ago. We were focused on building mobile applications, so we were a service-based company. I eventually went on to sell that company, and I've since moved on and I'm working for someone else. So kind of gone a little bit backwards in the sense that I went from the entrepreneurial part of myself and now I'm looking and working for somebody else. So I'm not going to tell a story about profound gratitude. I'm obviously grateful for my daughter and my wife and family and all that stuff. I'm going to tell a story about just a moment in something that happened to me where it was just pure gratitude. Right? It's just a moment to be super, super grateful. So I went to college, like I think a lot of people do, with not a ton of ideas what I would do post-graduation. I just knew that it was a good idea. And in doing so, I focused on business administration because I said, well, shit, that is widely applicable. Why not, right? And I'd always been pretty entrepreneurial. So as I approached graduation, I really weren't loving the prospects in front of me. So I thought it's time for me to take a little bit of time, enjoy the world that the people that have come before me had created, and see what else was out there before I really kind of locked into a track. So I hit the road. And one of my trips of many, I went to Australia, because one of the things that I really love to do is surf. Even that I live in Maine, I do love to surf. So Australia, mecca of surfing. If you go there, you will see cars with surfboards strapped to the top, and people of all walks of life, right? Just looking for the moment to get out into the water. I remember seeing a carpenter with his work truck and several boards on there, right? And then quickly darting off to the beach to go surf. Or a 90-year-old woman, I swear she must have been 90, barely able to drag the board to the water, but she would still go surf. And that was compelling to me to be a part of that culture. So I head out into the water, and I'm out there, and it's such a beautiful day. But I'm not the strongest surfer by local standards, right? You've got people that are throwing down like you see in videos and magazines. So I gravitate away from them. I don't want to get in their way. I just want to, enjoy the day, the beautiful water, the beautiful weather. And I'm out there, and I'm paddling around, getting thrashed around a little bit. And there's a moment where just off in the horizon, I can see a set building. It's getting bigger and bigger. And these things look like drive-in movie screens when you're laying on your belly and it's just that far out. And so you start and you scramble and you're heading out for it and you're going to catch this wave because you've got to get far enough out so that you're beyond that break point. And then it happened. About 25 feet from me, give or take, I see a dorsal fin come up out of the water and scan right in front of me. And I think, holy, are you kidding me? This is my biggest fear. Everyone's fear. Like, if you're in the water, there's nothing but dark below you. You've got clouds passing overhead, making giant shadows, and those shadows in your mind become something that is no doubt going to come up and eat you. Well, now I've got proof. There is a dorsal fin that just scanned in front of me, and that is something that's going to come eat me. I think, oh, shit. What do I do? So my mind's racing to the magazine that I had read a week earlier about the things to do. Like, okay, get my extremities up on that board. Okay, don't put them in the water. Okay, but shit, now I'm just bait, right? I cannot just stay right here. So I've got to turn around. So slowly, one hand out, come back, still there, good. Do it again, and I get it turned around. Okay, now I'm pointed back at the beach. Beach is where I want to be. Beach is safety. So the wave starts to come up behind me. I'm like, okay, I need to paddle to get momentum to get on this wave, but paddling makes you look like a fish that's in trouble and food. So I'm like, okay, no, I'm just gonna do it. And I give 1, 2, 3 big strokes. And just as I do, I turn over to check the wave as it's coming up behind me, and it's cresting, and it's big, but it's thin, so the light's passing through it, and I can see the outline of a body in that wave. Within a moment, out of the water leaps a dolphin, and I go, holy thank God that's a dolphin. I was so grateful at that moment, and I still went to the beach, and that's my story on gratitude.
So my name is Jesse Bania. I'm new to Maine by about 5 months or so. I moved here from New York, and previously I was in Wisconsin, which is my native state. I'm a father. I am a postgraduate. I am an aspiring entrepreneur, and I'm a bartender. So I am many things, and in all of those, there's a tide in gratitude that I will try to elucidate for you in this talk. So in 2007, I was in Spain after my initial graduation, and I was on my own, which was my idea, and I got there early. I was sort of on jet lag, and I found myself walking about a lot, trying to make my way through the experience, and in that experience, I realized how much Spanish I didn't know. I found myself being that sort of quintessential American in Europe, and I was a little bit embarrassed by it. And so towards the end of my 1 month in Spain, I was at a restaurant, I was looking at a menu, and there were still some things that I wasn't able to put together. And I thought to myself, I was like, this is really embarrassing. And I love to travel. I learned a lot just through that 1 month of what I was able to see and do on my own, that I promised myself next time I would be abroad anywhere, I would do better. I would prepare myself more for that experience. And so fast forward to 2010, I was working at a bank. On the weekends I was working at a hotel, bartending, and I began to, sidestep, I was also preparing a business plan with a colleague for a self-sustaining fitness center. And mid 2009, we looked at each other in a cafe and we said, no, let's travel. And so that's what we did. And he set out a month before I did to South America, where I was going to go and spend 3 months, 2 of which were going to be with him. And leading up to that, he decided to cancel his 2 months with me and came home. So here I was, set to go to another Latin American place on my own, and I said to myself I was not going to have that same experience. So in my relationships in the service industry, in my relationships at the bank, in my relationships at home vis-a-vis media, I watched movies, I listened to music, I listened to radio stations. I did everything I could to prepare myself for the culture that I would sort of be experiencing. The best one, by the way, is Motorcycle Diaries, because it sort of takes you through the continent. And so I went, and I did a backwards J from Rio de Janeiro all the way up to Ecuador, where I spent a month volunteering. And by the time I was so prepared for what I had done, I was able to bus 12,000 kilometers in the process, all the way through, all along the way, making friends, all on my own. And then I got to Ecuador, where there was one other American who ran the organization that I worked with. And there was another native Ecuadorian who spoke little to no English. And we developed a phenomenal relationship. We worked together, we planted trees, we whacked weeds, and we even taught each other English and Spanish in the plaza on our time off. And so what I learned from that was that through relationships is really, really how we grow. And so as I pivoted forward, I moved back to New York, and I went to graduate school, and I began to see something. And what I was sort of aspiring to study, which was social development and just sort of an international perspective. And I even took that a step further towards the end, and I framed it within sort of educational policy and learning. And I was really curious about this idea that it's really in relationships that we learn and that we grow. That's it. We institutionalize so much of education, but what we forget is what every new relationship can teach us. And still, to this day, I bartend. I've been doing it for 12 years, just part-time for supplementary income. And I speak Spanish at work to native Spanish speakers, to non-native Spanish speakers, to anyone who's willing to talk with me, because you never know where that relationship is going to go. My sister-in-law, she has fostered to adopt, and my best friend's wife, she's Colombian, he's a native New Yorker, and in their household, both of those households, they speak Spanish and they speak English regularly, and it enlivens the kids, it enlivens each other. They both learn, they all learn in the process. And now, bringing that forward to where I am right now, as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a bartender, as an avid lover of travel, I'm doing the same thing. I'm speaking, I'm listening to people, I'm not judging in their inability to speak or their level of their ability to speak. And I guess through all of that, I've found a sort of like an equilibrium or a stasis or a static level of gratitude that I can live on a daily basis, I suppose. Thank you.